Okay. So, quick, no deal, we've done this a bunch.
Time for another question?
Yeah.
In, once you go here, do you then shift weight back before you do this?
Yeah, because you want to open your lead leg.
So you want to then go shift your weight with the throw forward? So
Mhm.
where's the weight shift? You go this way?
Now shift to the right, so you can open your left leg,
Right.
open your left hip, turn. Yeah, and now express and shift onto your left.
So the weight is on this with the throw?
Right, well, it may not be. They may throw easily, or the angle you want it may not be, but it could be too. The point is that you take your weight off and ready to throw. It's the opening of the hip.
And
Yep.
the foot turns out.
Right.
before the
That
throw.
gives you a
So it's not-
big sweep. Right.
it's
Like
not
in
slant.
slant flying, my foot turns 90 degrees in order to have that big motion. This is even more of a turn possibly.
Without a step.
Right. Yep.
This is just a turn.
Yep, correct. Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so couple things with using focus pads. And this is a different lesson than an air shield, something like you might, a bigger piece that you'd be taking kicks, for example, to, or body check kind of movements. So one, and this is, super important, is that you don't just close any old way. Because eventually, let me borrow your right hand, I'm gonna take a step back for that way for me. Yeah, thanks. So eventually, make a fist for me. As he's practicing hitting, one day, I'm gonna move you this way. Yeah, no, you're good, Alan, thanks. So eventually, real slow, one day what happens is that happens. And he may never really see that. If you guys can see, you seem, that seems reasonable, however I'm holding the bag, and then all of a sudden, this gets caught, right? So what I wanna do is close this into a fist. Now, it's much less likely anything to get caught in terms of the fist, and if my fist does get hit, that can handle it better, and it's entirely protected, right? Unless you're sort of, maliciously trying to punch this way, right? So it's really important that I don't just kind of close any old way like this, and it's also important that I don't do this, because the bag loses a fair amount of stability if I don't grab that hook. So that's what I want to have. Okay, so yeah, good, you can do the strike. Good. So what's important to me is that I don't have this mindset, the one I'm displaying now, which is, that's usually comes about from a couple different things. Oh, it's bag hitting time. I'm a guy. That means it's caveman time. And so I basically become a caveman. That's one thing that leads to that, which I haven't talked about too much yet. The other thing that leads to it is that if he hits it the way that I say is wrong, got hit it pretty good. Listen, if he hits it, that's so much less satisfying, the sound in the room. Good, and, right? So the first one's way more satisfying, even subconsciously.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be the other thing that gets me to wanna be here, to be rigid, right? But rigid means we take this, do a really good shot for me. We take that force and we put it all into here, right? Which is, where things tear, right? And become arthritic, right? We tear at the bursa sac and the AC joint and the delt and strain all this. That's not made to take all those forces, right? That's why with a baseball bat and the major leagues, they don't do this. The bat moves fairly little, right? The elbows change. The bat's pretty well in front of the body until the end when it's released, like when you do this, right? And even at that, if it starts here, the bat's falling and then the hips lead it, right? I'm not pulling from there. So what's really important besides the holding of this is how I receive the strike. I keep my stance, I lubricate my joints, and I lubricate my mind to practice receiving with my body, which is the same thing when I end up taking a shot that I want to be able to do. Give me a little shot. Yeah, give me a little shot. Give me something. That's not what I want to do, right? The caveman in me wants to, right? And the sound in the room makes me want to. But what I want to be able to do is go with it. Lubricated in the mind, lubricated in the heart, lubricated in the joints, but stable here. So do a palm straight this time. I don't want to just be doing this, right? I want to have a stance. So when he does that, I'm in a position that I can do my thing. But I received. So the practice on this is a practice of receiving, which basically means lubrication on a good structure, on a good stance. So there's no part of me that has a push into him. Let's do a downward one so the camera reads it. You know, people want to kind of like see it coming, go up into it, makes a bigger noise, it sounds, feels more caveman-y. But what I want to do is just be lubricated and move. So just do the punch, that's it. That is also what will allow me eventually to receive and give at the same time. This caveman doesn't let that happen. That's two things. So eventually I want to be able to receive that and then deliver a strike, another block, you know, whatever it happens to be. Is that clear to everybody? Okay. So what I want to practice is doing that with slaps or back fists. So more or less horizontally. They can fall a little bit, which tends to be a little bit easier for people. So this slight angle, you know, kind of heading over towards my other hip kind of motion. And I'm mostly letting my partner practice, so that's my angle, so a little bit. That's giving my partner a chance to practice his good stance and his quad being active, and he's lubricated. He doesn't have this taking it sensation, right? And I can certainly practice getting a little bit of movement and feeling that I'm not trying to teach a strike at this moment, right? And you can also do it as a back fist if you want this kind of motion. If you want to have your guard up in a precise stance, that's fine. Mostly here I just want to get a little looseness for him to have a little bit of timing, a little familiarity, a little opportunity for him to double check what he just did and make corrections, like, oh, that's a little, you know. Good. And so he might notice here that he's doing a pretty small circle, so he's not quite lubricated. He's kind of trying to describe a circle, like with his ego and his muscles. So I'd rather have him feel that, yes. So it finds its way to the hips, even though I'm not hitting all that hard or anything. So back fist or down diagonal slap, just because they're relatively easy without feeling like you have to learn that strike particularly. Okay? So you and Dave and the two plate-sized guys.
Oh, yeah.